Hey, everybody. It's Eric J. Olson. Why am I broadcasting live to you now on social media? It's because it's another live edition of the Journey to $100 million. So if you're not familiar with the Journey to $100 million, it is a daily podcast that I do with the co-founder here at Array Digital, where we talk about all the things that we're learning as we scale our digital marketing agency up to $100 million by the year 2030. Now, we've got a lot to learn and a long ways to go. So it's not just, the things that we're learning in isolation here at the company, but we talk to a lot of other entrepreneurs. And the goal of what we're doing today is to bring on another entrepreneur and talk about business, talk about how they got their start, talk about maybe some of the rough times in the beginning and their lessons learned. All right. So there's always an opportunity to learn from other people. And that's exactly what we want to do here is bring other people on, talk to them and see if we can find out something that we could apply to our business or that you could apply to your business. So we're going to go live for about 15 to 20 minutes. And what we'll do is we'll take one or two snippets from this live broadcast and we will turn them into actual episodes that will come out in a week or two or three on the Journey to $100 Million podcast, which, by the way, you can find on any podcast platform out there. So just go in there and search for Journey to $100 million. So today I want to introduce our guest. I had to write this down because if you see that name, that's not an easy one. Ghazenfer.
You're close. Ghazenfer.
Ghazenfer. Yeah. I'm so sorry.
Always.
I always try, but I'm rarely successful at the pronunciations.
Yeah, it's always challenging. Different foreign names obviously have a different pronunciation, so no big deal.
Cool, man.
I get butchered all the time. So
thank you for giving me the pass.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
Okay. Thanks for having me. It's great to be on this podcast, and I hope your journey to 200 million, we will work along the way with you. So my background, I'm originally from Pakistan. So I grew up there. That's where my early education is. Then I came to this country 22 years ago, worked with different companies, to startups as an early engineer, and then did some consulting, worked for different companies. And then I had my own startup, which was a recruitment software startup. It's a SaaS product. So after going through all of those experiences, ups and downs on the startup side, as well as those growth and failure challenges, I started this business. Technology was 6 years ago. This is where we are helping SaaS companies, startups, early stage companies in their product development journey.
Nice. So how did you go? And I'm sure it wasn't like a single event, but how did you go from being, someone that worked in a company to the idea of starting your own company?
Well, looking back, I would say when I had this entrepreneurial gene before, where even at my high school level, I was doing some side things to make extra money on the side to move along. So, but you don't realize it until you're really in it. So working for different companies, and there were many different, you can say, boring aspects of it, where yes, you're working hard, but at the same time, you wanted to make a difference. You wanted to have an impact. And there are times when you feel like you want to do it the way where you could make a bigger impact. So that's how I started. So yeah, it's a little bit different, especially when you're getting into this. It's very challenging leaving that lucrative career and then getting into your own, because there are a lot of risk involved with that.
Oh yeah. And how did you go about doing that? Did you freelance and you built it up, or you just said one day I'm done and you started your own company with nothing? What was that transition like?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I first started consulting, even at that time it was risk. I had a few month old daughter, and we just closed our first house. But before the first payment of my house, I quit my job and started consulting.
Oh, wow.
Looking back, that was the best decision I had because that consulting freelancing helped me make extra money that gave me additional support to try and experiment different things. So, and I've always been, yeah, I do take a lot of risk, but at the same time, those are all calculated risk because, I mean, living obviously with families and all of other liabilities. I didn't see any of those as a hurdles that I hear quite often that when you have these family struggles, you may not be. But in my case, I think I overcome most of these easily.
Okay, so you were already consulting when you decided to quit your day job, and was it just continue the same consulting but try to get more of it? Is that
So initially, it was I was working with a company, and then I quit and started consulting. But when I started this part of the business, that's when I was getting out of my startup. So this is where I was even much lower on the money part as well. But thought of like, okay, what do I do next? I could go do a government contracting, which is very common in this area, and I could make good money. I could work with another startup. But considering all the situation, I decided to start this business for multiple reasons. Um, uh, I mean, I could stay closer to the startups culture. I mean, I love that culture. I love that entrepreneur. So I wanted to be around that, and I wanted to help that community. So this is the way where I could have my own thing, helping those companies build successful products. And so, not necessarily we don't own those products, but at least we're still contributing to a lot of those successful ventures. The second main reason was the startup culture, especially in this area. A lot of people coming out of the government contracting, corporate culture, and building startup is not easy. Or doing a development for startup is different than when you're building something for corporate, which is mostly T&M, big projects. Uh, Startups have limited money. You
yeah?
need to do it the right way. So we came up with this motto that we want to do it the right way the first time. So every time we do it, we have this specific goal that startups do not have a money. They don't want to experiment. So we didn't want to get into a situation or wanted them to get into a situation. And we have seen that on the other side, where many times startups come to us after failed projects with other companies, and they're almost out of money. So in the last 6 years, I can say that we have not gone over budget on any single project. We didn't go over in terms of timing on any single project that we did for a fixed price.
That's a pretty big accomplishment, right?
It is, and especially in this era, in this dev world, where you hear commonly, "Oh, it's common the developers give estimate that doesn't fulfill." We don't see that.
Yeah. That's excuse me. That's very uncommon. So my background was software development, and for the first many years of our business, we were constantly late. And I actually created a core value to be on time, because the goal was to stop being late. Never mind doing it in advance of when that we promised. I just wanted to not be late anymore, and that was a significantly difficult thing to achieve. And with software, what I found is that software developers, there's generally a culture where it's okay to be late. It's expected to be late, and there's rationalizations for why it's late. Oh, no one's ever built this before, so how could you know how long it's going to take? But when you compare it to other engineering projects, if you consider software development like engineering, no one's ever built, the skyscraper that's about to go up, in New York City or whatever. But there's a significant amount of planning that goes into that. And with software, for some reason, most clients don't feel like it necessitates the planning. They just want to jump in and do it and start paying for it. And so the planning, it seems to me, gets skipped and we go right into execution. Is that kind of the experience that you've had as well?
Oh, absolutely. And this is the core reason of failure of many of these projects. And you articulated really well. So if you just jump in, there's no way. So when we even say doing the project that's done on time, you still have to define the scope, because when we work with a customer, they come in and they have a big vision, and that's right, you want to have. So what we do is we spend time, we understand their vision, so that we could build something that we could build according to the vision. So one of the analogies that I commonly use is, well, you're building your vision is building a mansion, but you don't have a money for mansion. You only have a money for this smaller piece that could be more like a studio type, where you only have a room, kitchen, bathroom, and something to live. So we will help you build a strong foundation. We build it and then gradually expand it. But what they get on many other places is they build a small one, which is the same understanding that, oh, we are building MVP. But if you miss the bathroom or kitchen, it's not launchable. So our motto is, like, from day one, we will help you create the version 1 or MVP thin, but it's something that's launchable, not something that is just to demo. Because if it's not going in front of the customer, you're not going to get a feedback. If you're not going to get a feedback, you're going to keep building. And we have seen so many cases where you keep building, and it's never launched.
Yeah.
Startups cannot survive this way.
Feature creep, right? Yeah, I've worked with a lot of companies that think they need 1 or 2 more features, and you build those 1 or 2 more features, and then they say, well, we really want this whole other feature. It's got to be there before we launch. And you may end up working on this thing for 6, 12, 18 months, and they don't launch. And it's like, you got to get it out there as quickly as possible. And it's, even if there's bugs, just get it out there and see if anyone's even interested, right? And if no one's interested, you've got something, you've got a bigger problem to solve than adding more and more and more features that aren't in the minimal viable product.
Right. And many times it's a thought that, oh, we think that the customer will need that. And many times the customers don't even need any of those features. So
that's right.
It brings down to, as you were saying, like product management part. So it's like, if you want to build a house, you don't just go and get a plumber, handyman, all those individuals, because somebody still need to give them a direction. You need to have a whole plan. So this is well organized demand, so people do it. Software is there even much longer. Why can't we do that for the software side?
Yep.
It requires its own discipline and patience. Many times people don't have a patience. They say, well, I want to start right now, and I want to just get the developer and get it done. That's right. You can get the developer, but that's not going to solve your problem.
That's right. Yep. And then, kind of a thing that I saw when I was building websites or mobile apps or things like that back in the day was, especially with these startups, especially with the ones that were constrained by funding, is they would pay us, and sometimes they pay us a lot to build this thing, and then they wouldn't market it properly. Do you see that as well?
Oh, yeah. So I would say software development is one part of the development, and there are other pieces. So launching and execution is the key. You can have software is easy. You can easily and cheaply develop, but if you're not able to market it well or sell it, then there's no point.
Yeah. So all we do now is digital marketing. And we got to this point where we don't do software anymore because of that problem that we were having, where we'd build it and then the client would put it out in the world and no one cared. And so we started to say, hey, you need a marketing plan. And we did that for a while. And then we would give a little more specific instructions, like, hey, however much you're paying us to build this thing, you need to have that same amount of money set aside to market this thing. Just because you build it doesn't mean they will come. And then after that, we started to actually provide some of those services, and we got more and more into the marketing side of things, and eventually said, you know what, we want to actually focus on the marketing part. But yeah, for me, I noticed without marketing, I was working on a lot of these projects that would kind of just come and go, or they'd stagnate. And I wanted to work on projects that had more legs that people would recognize. Right. And so I started to get a little more vocal about with my clients about they need to invest in the marketing, things that we didn't even really provide in the beginning, because I wanted to be associated with more successful projects.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think they should start very early,
Yeah.
right when you're planning for their development. You need to build your user acquisition strategy. And many times, a lot of marketing strategies goes inside your development. So on the web, it may be different, but on the mobile especially, you have to have, whether you're doing a referrals, whether you're doing coupons or messaging to those people differently. That needs to be implemented as part of that. So if you're bringing in a marketing after your product is developed, at that time, now you need another set of features to be developed in order to support that.
Yeah.
So, but and
Totally
when we talk to the customers, one of the things we do, we talk to them upfront. Like, even though when they're asking for example money for the MVP, we say, hey, yes, it will cost you this much, but in order to really launch, you need to have at least this much more to support the features, because you'll get a feedback from your customer, and you need to have for other things as well. If this is the only money, I would rather suggest you reduce this one, so that's something you can launch, because your success is our success. If you're out of the money after this one, what can we do? But what if we could do it lean and cheap way, even doing certain things in a different way? You may even have to do manually certain things just to get the MVP out, so that you could put the core part that you want in front of the customer and use the other money to get the customers. Because as you have more customers, you will need to build the product anyway.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with you. That was a hard lesson for us to learn, but I think it was a good thing to tell clients, because we all want to be associated with successful projects. So.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, as far as like the actual kinds of clients that you work with, what have you found to be like your sweet spot, industry wise, or maybe like client size wise? You mentioned startups. Do you still work with startups? Are all startups the same? You're up in Reston, Virginia, so that's kind of like like Washington D.C. Suburbs. You're working with like DoD contractors, government contractors. Yeah, who do you work with, generally speaking?
Okay, no government contracting. So all commercial startups. We love startups. Startups are still majority of our customers. We do have some enterprises, but majority startups. In terms of our ideal customer, I would say SaaS companies from seed to Series A. Those are the ones that we primarily work. So when we say SaaS, both web and mobile. We started as a mobile app development company, and then but gradually got into more and more custom development. Because depending on a product, like let's say we're doing one big sales coaching and training platform. So it requires voice over IP, incoming calls, Chrome extensions, desktop app. You need that. It has a recording, transcription. There are so many things. It's not always just the web application. So I would say it's from in terms of the type of company, SaaS. In terms of industry, I would say about 25 to 30% of our work is in the healthcare. So we specialize in HIPAA compliant application development, both web and mobile. So we have done many applications. So that's one of the major area where we get majority of our leads.
So I've been out of software development for about 4 years now. At that time, JavaScript was super hot. Node, React. Is that still kind of the hot technology, or where's the technology gone in the last 4 years?
JavaScript is still the hard, and I think it will continue to be. And I think that was the best one of the best transitions, because it used to be you have a different Java and other and front end developers. Now at least if you are really good in JavaScript, you could do both front end and back end. Node is still the popular one. React is still the popular front end. Obviously, there are other Vue and Angular, but React is still. And bigger benefit of the React is that now you can also have the hybrid mobile apps, React Native, so you could leverage the same skill set. So it's much easier to train people who already know one thing to be compatible on all sides.
Very cool. Very cool. Well, awesome. Well, hey, if someone wants to reach out and ask you a question, what is a good way to get in touch with you?
My LinkedIn, that's the best way to reach out. I'm pretty accessible there, or they can always reach out through my website, technology. But once you go to my LinkedIn, you'll find everything about me, the website, and all the other links.
Well, very cool. Appreciate your time.
Right.
So yeah, just kind of a recap for you and for everyone else. We're going to take a couple snippets from this interview. I've got 3 here. Roughly minute 7, working with startups. Roughly minute 9, having on-time projects, and roughly 14 minutes in, marketing your project and product. So I think these are all super pertinent to the kind of work that I've done in the past, that you do. Probably a lot of people watching or will watch on this interview. These are things that are important, and these are things that are like hard lessons learned sometime. As an example, on-time projects. If you're constantly late, and you just, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, if you allow it, it will continue. All right, but if you say, you know what, no, we have a higher standard, and we're going to get our projects out on time, then all of a sudden, over time probably, but you'll start to put out projects and products more on schedule. And so, you had said that, like, you don't miss schedules. That's super impressive. I would never be able to say that. Like, even now, like, we generally want to hit our timelines, but yeah, things happen. But it sounds like you've got a dialed in process, and that's super impressive. So yeah, we got plenty of content here. I'll be making at least 1, 2, or 3 actual episodes from this interview, and I'll let you know when they come out.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. Thank you. Okay. Bye-bye.